What's up, y'all? This is Vocab Malone. You are rocking with Street Apologist Live. The date is Saturday, February 20th, 2021. It's about 7:40, not quite, but almost p.m. here in Arizona. We're on Mountain Time right now, and I got a very special show for y'all today. We're going to be live streaming for probably about an hour and a half, and this is a show where we're going to have Adam Coleman as a guest. And as you can see on the screen, over there, we're going to be talking about apologetics in context. That's culturally contextual and relevant apologetics. And it's going to be getting into some sample chapters from a new book called Apologetics in Context. And this is something that Adam Coleman and I have been working on. He's contributed some chapters, and we're going to bring it to you today here on Street Apologist Live, the show where we serve the underserved and look into the overlooked. So with that, let's welcome Adam Coleman back to Street Apologist, bro. It's been a hot minute. Although you and I talk at least once a week, it's been a little while since we've had you on the show. So shout out to you. Let me give you the applause. Your mic volume's up, man. Tell people what's been going on in the beautiful ministry, tru-id Apologetics.
Hey, man, I'm doing all right, man. I don't know about beautiful, you know what I mean? I haven't had an edge up in a little while, so I'm looking a little scraggly. But, other than that, the ministry itself, just been trying to put out content, man. You know what it is in these YouTube streets, just trying to stay on top of things. And, got 4 rambunctious kids and a bunch of videos to put it out. So, trying to juggle between the two. And keep my hair at the same time. You know what I mean? It's a little difficult, but we making it happen.
That's the COVID struggle hair right now, but at least you still got it, I guess, is what you're saying. That's all right.
Right.
All right. Well, man, I don't even remember how long ago was it.
Right, it's still there.
Was it?
For now.
Yeah, I'm glad for you though. Yeah, But was it maybe 2 years ago when we were talking about the next book I was going to work on, and you sent me some chapters and also pointed me to some other stuff that you had done in different contexts. I think it was about that long ago. And now I'm finally kind of getting around to putting it in order. The book is not done, everybody, but tonight is our Street Apologist Book Club, and what we're going to be doing is giving you guys some sample flavor of the topics we're hitting in the 3 chapters Adam is contributing to. So far, he's contributing to 3 chapters, and to be honest, they're my favorite chapters, so I kind of hope Adam maybe contributes some more chapters before it's all said and done. But you had some really good stuff, and I feel like your voice was perfect for this. Let me bring up the PDF here on my screen. I don't know if I'm gonna show it to the audience.
Yeah, that's great. Was it 2 years ago?
I think that's about the time. I can look at the emails, but yeah.
All right.
So this is
man, you slacking, man. What's up?
Well, tentatively, this is chapter 6, and tentatively titled "Christianity versus Identity: Is There a Conflict?" And as of now, I'm leading off the chapter with a quote by the OG Dr. Carl Ellis Jr. that says this, and then I'm going to really hand it over to you from here. Here's the quote. "Ethnicity has beauty only as it derives from understanding that we are in God's image. Absolute ethnicity, like every other finite concept that is absolutized and cut off from God's revelation, will always end up crashing on the rocks of meaninglessness and chaos. African American identity will have its real fulfillment only when it is seen in light of how God is active in the world." And so really, so far at this point in the book, what a person would have seen is kind of a brief introduction to the field of urban apologetics, that context, some Bible examples of apologetics, some basic talk about methodology, some basic talk about tactics. In this part of the book where you come in, kind of switches a little bit over to really NRMs in an urban context. NRMs is a technical name for new religious movements because people like to use that instead of cults as far as academics. I'm okay with cult as long as you kind of understand what you're saying and use it in the right way. But I'm just using NRMs here, and we're going to introduce people to these new alternative urban spiritualities and why they're becoming more popular, and really focusing on the idea of identity. And really, that's where in the chapter I kind of hand a pen over to you, so to speak. And so let's hand the mic over to you, bro, and kind of take it from there. Say whatever you need to say, and I'm going to make sure I get your name on the screen while you're talking, because I didn't do that before the show. I'm sorry.
So unprofessional, man. It's a shame, bro.
I forget how to live stream.
Tighten up, you know.
I forget how to live stream. It's been so long.
Right. Well, no, man, you know, it's really interesting. So for me, it was about, I keep saying 4 or 5, but it's probably been more like 6 or 7 years ago now, where I was kind of, I was really in that mode of studying apologetics on a daily basis, man. I was getting it in. I was listening to hours of like William Lane Craig and John Lennox and all these different guys. And I realized as I was coming across like people in what I now understand to be like the conscious community and stuff along those lines, really, you know, addressing them. And it just seems like, we'll talk about in a second, we're kind of, you know, flying under the radar. And not only did people just seem to be unaware of them, they didn't know what they're about and what they're, you know, what they were bringing to the table. And so I just started kind of doing my own investigation, man, and trying to understand, you know, when somebody says, you know, religion, like what's behind that, you know, when somebody says, you know, Jesus was based on Horus, you know what I mean? Like, yeah, like there was something more to it. There was like this emotional component to it. So I just started looking into like try to understand where people was coming from. A lot of the thoughts that I end up putting in these chapters kind of my just really wrestling with it, trying to understand where people were coming from and how can I articulate the church will no longer like be unaware. Because I mean, like you and I talk about, you know, like you said, we chime, and it's like as much, you know, work as we were putting in, and you know, everybody in the urban apologetics community is putting in, like there's just large chunks, you know, like, or I would probably say even the vast majority of, you know, the body of Christ, and even within the, you know, the African American context, you know, the Black church, so to speak, they're just unaware, and if they are aware of them, it's kind of you know, and so what to do, man, in terms of you know, educating folks. And so anyway, you know, long story, that's kind of really what launched me to tru-id. As I'm looking at these different groups, one thing that kept coming up over and over again was this notion of identity. You know, is, you know, I noticed that essentially the different groups that we're talking about in a second, whether it be the Hebrew Israelites or the Comedics or the Moors, you know, what I call African spiritualists. What I noticed that all these groups had in common is that they were all kind of had the same 1-2 punch, in the sense of it was like, okay, you know, our ancestors were this X, Y, and Z, and we need to return to. Here's what our answers were. They were Hebrews, or they were this, or they were that. It's almost like this 1-2 punch where they claim, well, like, look, if you want to know who, then, you know, a European side, you're really this over here. And then, you know, and then they follow that with, okay, well, if you're a Hebrew, then you need to follow the Hebrew, you know, religion. Or if you're a Moor, you need to follow the religion that the Moors follow. If you're Kemetic, then you need to follow the religion and spirituality and so on and so forth that the Kemetics had. You know, so it's just that 1-2 punch. So I'm gonna lead with the identity, and I'm gonna follow with the, you know, the religion or spiritual system or whatever. And it was just so consistent. I'm like, okay, well, this is so true. Like, what are they on as they lead in? I'm gonna go into that now.
Yeah, that's why, Adam, the you know, this actual show, if people look at what we're live streaming about, the cover image says spirituality and identity, and then the title of it is the question the urban cults claim to answer but don't. Right. Because that's kind of what we're saying is, you know, you mentioned what you call a 1-2 punch. That's what they claim to answer, like, who am I? Which we recognize everybody asks in some way at some time, but at the same time, we also recognize it can be more acute depending on your situation, scenario, and the setting, right? So we recognize that. And so in certain places and times, it's more acute, you know? So we're looking at that. And they come in, and just because you identify with a problem or sympathize with a problem or point out a problem does not mean the solution that you put forward is the right solution, is the right answer. So they could have their finger on the pulse of things that might be accurate. That doesn't mean what they say in response, though, is right. And so that's really what we're getting at in these 3 chapters. And I like the way you did it because, you know, you kind of talk about... So, sorry, man, you're breaking up a little bit. I wonder if we might have to call back. Everyone can hear you, but it goes a good amount. You know what I'm saying? Adam?
Oh, really? Is it still breaking up now? Or yes, I had stopped talking, so I wasn't sure if...
Well, now your video is frozen. If you could just call back so we can unfreeze that, unless it unfreezes right now, but it's not. We're frozen, so we hear audio with just a still image. If you could...
Okay. All right. I'll call back. All right.
Yeah. Appreciate that. So guys, right now, if you look on the screen, it says discussion topics, and the first one is JC versus ID. I had to, put these up kind of small, right? And the idea there is Jesus Christ, JC. I usually don't like doing that, but I figure it's okay for this little thing, right? And the idea is Christianity versus identity, meaning is that a real problem? Because the way that a lot of these new alternative urban spiritualities paint the picture is that being a Christian and being somebody who is non-white, basically, there is a problem, that those are... that's an oxymoronic situation, that's a clash, that's an impossibility, kind of like jumbo shrimp or government intelligence, right? Those two things don't make sense. They don't go together. It's the way that the purveyors of the new alternative spiritualities, that's the way they put it forward. That's the way they put it. And so the first thing they do is not necessarily tell you how great they are. They tell you how bad Christianity is. That's a lot of times how they start out. Why Adam's coming back on, let me draw my attention real briefly to the live chat. And I see Jonathan C. says, is this a new stream or a premiere? This is a live stream. You are live rocking with Adam Coleman and Vocab Malone. We're just getting him back in. But shout out to D-New. Shout out to Rome G. Shout out to Nate. So we got the squad in the house. Shout out to Wawo. Woohoo! Shout out to Darnell. Shout out to one of many. And who else? Oh, Phil Fox in the house. Hey, Adrian, how you doing? Hey, Tyler, what's up with you? Hey, John Lee. Is it John Lee or John Lay? Let me know. Hey, JP, I saw today you commented, and you said that new exclusive I released on Patreon. You said it had the Busta Rhymes vibe, and that was my boy Smooth Rapture, and he definitely does have that Busta Rhymes flavor. So I agree with you 100%, by the way. All right, Adam is back. We'll see. Hey, Matthew, by the way. Also, there's a couple other people I think I left out, but forgive me. We'll hopefully get to you later. And somebody said in the live chat, bro, that maybe you're not here because you might be eating a sandwich. He said you might be eating a sandwich. And just so everyone knows, that doesn't have anything to do with like the way anyone looks, because you could accuse me of eating a sandwich too. It has to do with the fact that Adam's always eating a sandwich when we talk to him.
Right. But that's possibly that's could be accurate. It's actually a matter of fact, I did actually just finish eating right before I got on here, so
And hey, you look and sound better. I don't know what you did differently, but this is nice.
Yeah, I switched up a device. Got to figure out where to plug this my cell phone in, and but yeah, it's this is my iPhone, so it might actually work a little better.
Oh, it's better so far. So I'm glad we did that. All right. Okay, so let's
I might do a little bit of shuffling around just while I kind of get this thing set up,
I got you. No sweat. Hey, shout out to Shaft the Brian as well. And all right, so share this link, by the way. And if you're in the live stream, will you guys please hit that like button? And Naomi says, miss seeing you live, Vocab. And Marvin Henry's in the house as well. And so, guys, what I'm trying to show you with this live stream is that part of the reason I'm not live streaming as much, because since November, it's been once a month only. Part of the reason why I'm not live streaming or doing a ton of interviews, which I think I've only done one in that whole time, is I'm writing this second book. And the story is it began as one book and kind of turned into 3 books. Now, what will be the end story? I don't know, right? It's being written, pun intended, literally as we speak. And so I'm showing you, though, this part of this book, which the first book coming out is called Apologetics in Context. I've got a potential, tentative title or whatever. Let me throw it on the screen so you can see it actually. That's one mock-up on my man Bry from The Shy. But actually, let me show you a couple other mock-ups I got. There's another mock-up that the brother sent over. And so we're, looking at some different ways. We'll probably end up combining some of the best features of all the different things he sent over. But I'm just showing you, some of the flavors. I have actually shared this with the squad, the Patreon supporters already, but I haven't shared it with you guys. And right now, what Adam Coleman is doing is he's a contributor to at least 3 chapters. Now, I'm not just saying this, so don't take it as, I really mean what I'm about to say. In my view, the chapters with Adam are the best in the book so far. And so I hope he can actually contribute. Yeah, you totally agree. I'm sure you've read the rest of it, right? But I hope that he I hope he's able to contribute more, basically. And so that's something I'm still kind of poking and prodding at him about and see will he be able to, do it. And I've actually contacted the brother that I'm trying to get to do the preface for the book as well. I was meditating about it and asking people about it, and I think I've come up with the man that I would like to try to see if he can do the preface as well. And so that'll be a nice little surprise. And so with that, now continuing on. You write about a new danger arising after kind of with, in a way, the rise of the new atheist that happened in what we call the early aughts, Dawkins and co. And you talk about something else that kind of slipped under the radar that people also need to pay attention to. And shout out to Elder Mike, your urban church, and Brother Brian also in the house too. And E.C. Gallegos, another squad member. And so can you talk a little bit about that as we continue on with this these chapters, my friend?
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, yeah, it's actually kind of funny because I'm reminiscent of having written this article like probably about 4 years ago now. And it's funny. So basically, when I wrote the original material for these chapters, I was trying to communicate to a primarily white audience what it was that I was seeing in the urban context. So it's, my challenge was, well, how do I help people who have no idea what's going on, culturally within African American settings? How do I help them to understand where, what the need for apologetics is, particularly in the African American context? And so to kind of borrow from something that would be familiar to them, what I did was I put it in context of understanding what's referred to as, the new atheism that we see, sprouting up, I guess, going back to what, 2000, your early 2000s or whatever. And so if you understand what's kind of going on with the new atheism, basically it's folks drawing from the Enlightenment period and notions of prioritizing, reason over faith and breaking away from, religious authority and things of that nature. Back during the Enlightenment period, in your late medieval period or whatever, you basically have the seedlings, if you will, of the modern atheist movement. And so what I was trying to illustrate was that in the same way that people are contending today with the so-called new atheism that goes back to the Enlightenment period, breaking away again from religion and so on and so forth. And then we see that it manifesting today in the modern atheism. Likewise, what's going on in the African American context, you got to travel back a couple centuries to understand that as well. Except, rather it be, faith versus reason, which is kind of characterized in the Enlightenment period. Rather it being that sort of dynamic, it's more so faith, specifically the Christian faith, versus identity. And so, a minute ago, I was just mentioning how you have that 1-2 punch, that whether it be any of these groups, will kind of throw the identity piece out first. It's kind of like the bait, if you will. And then they'll bring in the spirituality that supposedly coincides with that identity. It's like that second punch there. One of the things that I noticed as I was kind of studying these different groups is that the common ground that they're all kind of treading on is this notion in the broader African-American context that we indeed do have an identity problem going on. And understand that you really do have to go back to the transatlantic slave trade. So I often talk about it in some of the lectures and stuff that I've done, understanding that if you go back to the transatlantic slave trade, prior to Africans being enslaved, I mean, you don't have like this unified notion of like Africanness or blackness or anything like that. That's a very Western idea. Before these groups were getting enslaved, I mean, they would base their identity on tribe, clan, maybe nation, to some extent. But there were various different people groups: the Awe, the Dahomey, the Fulani, the Yoruba, the Igbo. I mean, these are all different, people groups. And on the African continent, prior to being enslaved, they would have seen each other as being distinct. You know what I'm saying, and different peoples. But of course, what happens is, as you have, fighting between these different nations, so they're selling each other to Europeans. And in some instances, sometimes it's just straight out, kidnapping, to be sold to the Europeans. Nevertheless, one way or the other, you had this group of people who end up on these slave ships. And now, coming from these different people groups, it's kind of a wash at this point, because they're lumped into this one category of being African or Negro or Black. You know what I'm saying? And so the means by which they would have, naturally identified one another, or just identified distinctives between the people groups, that's all kind of out the window now. Now it's like, we're all in the same predicament. And that's where you begin to see the emergence of this new identity. This identity that's based on the common predicament of being enslaved persons in the West. So whereas again, you had the Awe, the Fulani, the Yoruba, and all these different groups. Now, you're all shackled up together. You know what I'm saying? And there's this, kind of taking a step back from the European side of it. They obviously they didn't care about all of them either. It was all about identity as well, which is just, it was more of a racial nature, if you will. So you just have people who were once distinct people groups, and now you're just Black. That's it. Now, kind of looking at it, I mean, we often gloss over it, but I mean, from a sociological standpoint, that's pretty profound. That's a pretty huge, I guess you can say, culturally traumatic event, when you think about it, because you have all these people who, left to their own setting, where they're from, they're appealing to things like their religion. They might identify one another based on markings on the skin that they would have, or maybe just a certain build. And there's all these different ways that they would identify one another as being us, and then identifying them. But now that's all out the window. You know what I'm saying? Now the means by which they generally develop a sense of identity is fractured. And so out of that, you have, again, like I said, the emergence of a new identity. Now, I want to fast forward a little bit, but once you get, from the African continent over here into the modern world, I mean, you got to figure there's other elements too that's really chafing against, a natural development of identity. I mean, just think about being a child, and you're with your mother, your father, whatever. You're on this auction block. You get sold to, I don't know, Jamaica, and they get sold to somewhere in the Americas, or maybe even if you both make it to America, you get sold down south and they get sold somewhere else. I mean, the breaking up of families was a regular thing when it comes to the transatlantic slave trade. Was so-called the Black Codes, the laws that were imposed upon African peoples during slavery. Even those, in terms of how they function, broke down some of the ways that communities would have carried forward a sense of identity from Africa to the so-called New World. Being a perfect example, I'm thinking about particularly in some of the French occupied colonies. The slaves there, they were not able to practice some of their indigenous communal dances, right? And so if you come from a people group that passed down their ideas, their identity, and their values through dance, and that's going to be a disruptor in terms of how one develops identity. There's a discontinuity now in terms of that identity development, if you will. So there's a bunch of different factors like that. But I kind of go back to what I was saying a second ago, is that you really have this mass multicultural traumatic event where communities are disrupted in terms of how they do it. And you're still seeing the ripple effect of that today. When you compound being brought to the New World and being in a setting where everything about you, from your skin color, to your personhood, and all these things are oppressed. You know what I'm saying? So, for example, even after slavery was over. You and see caricatures of Africans and things of that nature. I mean, you place where you're at the bottom of the totem pole from a value standpoint, and so everything about you is trampled under. Well, I mean that does a number on the people. I mean that's not something, that's not a stain that easily. And I think that what you have, kind of fast forward to today, what you have is the reverberations of that. People are saying that, what, actually, um, we're going to reclaim our Africanness. We're going to cast off everything that's, considered to be European. And unfortunately, what they're coming to the conclusion is, well, okay, well, Christianity is European. So we're going to cast that off too. And we're going to adopt either our African or indigenous religion, in being in the mode of getting back some of that lost Africanness. And I think that right there is where, these NRMs come in, because they say, hey, we all know that we've got this identity problem. Let me solve that problem for you. You're a Hebrew. Let me solve that problem for you. You're a Kemet. You're from Kemet. Your people are from Kemet, or you're, Moor, and so on and so forth. And hey, by the way, not only am I going to solve the identity problem, if you really want to line up with what your people was doing back in the day, you got to, excuse me, you got to adopt this, this worldview that goes along with it. So again, for the Moor, you're going to have, some sort of kind of, pseudo-Islam kind of a thing going on. Or, for the Hebrew Israelites, you're going to have, a version, what we would just call it Hebrew Israelism, and things of that nature. And so there's that 1-2 punch that comes into effect, but it's so effective, or this identity wound, if you will, that's in place, and that's kind of what they're playing off of.
That's good. You're okay. Yeah, I want to make sure you weren't disappearing. You're still there. Okay, good. Excellent.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I just stopped for a second. I was wanting to make sure I wasn't either. So
yeah. No. Everyone's intact. And you bring up some good sources that you bring in here, and I don't know if you talk about any of those, because we got a lot to get through, actually. But I like how you talk about this identity being imposed, and that then equals kind of like what you touched on, but I don't know if you want to go deeper or want to skip to the next thing about this. Hey, well, this religion, it's for the white man. That's who it's for. It's not for you. And so that creates this, maybe there's a problem. Why am I? Why am I believing this because it's true? Or is this simply a remnant of oppression? And that's all that's happening. And so you could see, I'm relaying this to everybody, listening along. You can see a further identity crisis develop. And I think as certain community bonds and whatnot get released, it becomes more and more glaring. And what Adam and I are talking about is we're at a place now where it definitely is more glaring probably than it's ever been in the past, as far as this being a problem. Yeah.
Well, I mean, and that's a great point. And I think that what we're seeing is a reversal order, in the sense of, let's think of it like with the biblical worldview, for example. Let's go back to Genesis, right? In the beginning, God, right? Mm-hmm. God created the heavens and the earth. He does this, he does that. Like, if you're going to do theology right, okay, we're going to start with God, right? And we're going to understand who he is, right? He's the foundation of all reality. We're going to get it. And then what follows from that, we're able to understand who we are in light of that truth of the ultimate reality. I'm saying Yahweh, right? So identity, personal identity, is secondary to a truth, you know what I'm saying, and the ultimate truth, the ultimate reality, being God himself. Now, here's what's happening. When it comes to the conscious community, these various different groups, what you're seeing is okay, whereas, these different religions, and let's say, you get, for the Hebrew Israelites, you have Hebrew Israelism. For the Kemetics, you have, some sort of Egyptian spirituality. For the Moors, you have kind of a spinoff of Islam. And then for, what they would say is like Europeans, you have Christianity. So it's like these different religions are appendages, or they're accessories to the identity. You see what I'm saying? Versus putting, truth first and getting the foundations right, and then working from there. They're starting with the identity and then working out like this reversal, if you will. They're putting the cart before the horse. That might be it. And so with that being said, they believe that is like it's like, for a woman, like wearing a purse, an accessory. Saying for Europeans, the religious accessory that they have is Christianity. So what they're saying is, with these different groups saying is that, well, you're not European. So what you need to do is to adopt a spiritual accessory that coincides. So if you're Hebrew Israelite, then you need to, rock with, Israelism, and on down the line.
So
but I think
they're like, you're saying, they're saying, hey,
that you have this reverse.
Your purse doesn't match your outfit.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly right. Yeah, exactly right.
It's funny, though. It must tell us about the kind of wife you have. You said wearing a purse instead of carrying a purse. Meaning it's not necessarily functional. It just goes with the outfit. I don't nah. Wearing a purse.
Right.
Nah, but it's all right, though. Nah, but that's good, though. Now, the thing is, everyone should understand we're not. Whenever we do these kinds of things, I know there's people in the audience who are like, "Oh man, the world's obsessed with these issues, and now these guys are obsessed with these issues." We're saying a bunch of things, but one thing we're saying is this is what's happening on the ground, and so because of that, you need to be aware of the context. It's kind of like we're not. You don't have to. Like the way certain things are happening or whatever. It doesn't matter. If it's happening, it's happening. And so we're saying, look, this is what is happening here. And to understand the nature of the apologetic context, you want to understand the context. And, it's not really so crazy as people think when we start talking about some of this. Here's what I mean real quick. And, of course, I hand it back to you. Missiologists are those who study the theology of missionary work and activity. And they write about this stuff. And usually they're practitioners at some point in their life, too. They're not just theologians, they're missionaries or people involved with missions. And for a long time, people in seminaries, for example, we've talked for a while now, have talked about cross-cultural ministry as well. And so there's kind of these understandings of you understand in general the lay of the land and things like that. And I'm not saying that to witness to the guy down the street, you have to front and act like you listen to Tupac, like certain politicians. We're saying, look, it's good to understand what's happening. And be honest, I think a lot of people engage. Hey, shout out to Nate for hitting that Streamlabs button. The link's on the top. That's how we do super chats. Since we don't have super chats, please contribute with that link as well, and you'll get Bumblebee on the screen. I think not even everyone involved in urban apologetics. I'm not trying to act like I have the answer. You wrote these chapters, not me. But I don't even think everyone fully sometimes even knows what's happening that's involved in urban apologetics. And so we're just kind of priming it out, laying it out there, and you did a great job. But continue on with this because we got a lot more to get to.
Well, no, I mean, and I think you hit the nail on the head because, to be honest, I think one of the biggest mistakes that people, and I'm saying from the outside looking in the context of people who may not be involved in urban apologetics, and maybe they come across somebody who maybe fits the mold of what we've been describing here, and they don't know what to do with it. I think that people have a tendency to otherize folks, rather than saying, wait a minute, there's a common thread here. So kind of going back to what you just said, the question of who am I? That's the fundamental question of philosophy. Mm-hmm. You know what I'm saying? Like that's not specific to urban apologetics or black people or whatever. That question has been the topic of discussion for philosophers for eons. You see what I'm saying? So it just so happens that in this particular context, that question, carries a certain flavor with it. Or let's bring it around. Let's go with the Hebrew Israelites, for example. And I don't want to jump too far ahead, but when it comes to the Hebrew Israelites, they're trying to answer another fundamental question of philosophy, which is the problem of evil. What about evil and suffering in the world? Okay, so this kind of illustrates that 1-2 punch I was talking about. So let's say, for example, they're going to say to you, "All right, look, you're a Hebrew." You know what I'm saying? Or at the very least, you're probably a Hebrew if you're somebody of African descent living here in the West, right? And they're going to be like, basically what happened was the reason why black people are in the bad state that they're in is that back in the day, our ancestors didn't obey the laws of God, as in the laws of Moses or whatever, and they broke the laws. As a result, they took on the curses, and one of those curses was for us to be sold into slavery, and have all this bad stuff. You know what I'm saying? And
Mm-hmm.
so basically, so what are they trying to do? They're trying to respond to, man, why are black people in bad shape? Here in America, right? That's their answer to it. Well, it's because we broke the laws, and if we want to correct the situation, we need to get back to the laws. So that's their 1-2 punch. You're a Hebrew, and I'm going to give you this answer to why we're in bad shape. Now, at the
So,
same
so
time,
there,
the
everyone should
Kemetic,
know again, that's somewhat fundamental too. I just want people to understand part of what's happening with what Adam was explaining. Hebrew Israelites do is a theodicy. How could God? Why did God? And so a theodicy is technically a defense of God, but part of what the Hebrew Israelites are saying, okay, so we're in this condition. God allowed it to happen. And then they proceed to basically give their explanation. And that's why sometimes when you debate Hebrew Israelites, when they feel they're at their wits' end, they'll say, "So you mean God just let all this stuff happen to us for no reason?" They feel like they lost the explanation, and so that's really important. And now you're about to go into the. You can obviously comment on that, but I know you're going now into what the Kemet's, the kind of the way they give their answer. And so really now what we're doing, everybody, is, and this is going to be in the book, kind of giving people a general lay of the land of some of the competitors to Christianity in the city. And we're trying to show you, here's a survey of some of these groups and a basic representation of their ideologies. That's what we're doing. So people pick up this book and they say, okay, I get a little bit of, okay, I understand, a little bit more about who's who. Okay, and now let's go. But go on. I'm going to put you just on the screen by yourself for a second here. So take it away.
Yeah, definitely, man. We give a couple of examples of some of the groups that we're dealing with, and I want people to get a sense of that 1-2 punch that I was talking about earlier. So we talked about the Hebrew Israelites, and these are going to be groups of people who are, for the most part, African Americans. Of course, you're going to have some groups of them that reach out to, Native Americans, Hispanics, and so on and so forth. But primarily, you're dealing with African Americans who would claim that they are Israelites, as in the same Israelites that you read in the Bible. That's what they believe. You often hear them use that phrase, the Israelites that the Bible speaks of. They believe that that's them. And so again, they hold the view that back in the day, our ancestors disobeyed the laws, and came under the curses. And one of those curses goes back to Deuteronomy 28 verse 68. And in addition to all the other curses in that chapter, verse 68 deals with us being sold into slavery, and that's why we're here now. That's why we're in this bad predicament, and we need, the laws in order to get right with God, so to speak. Because that's their one. You're Hebrew, and B, to answer the question of why black people are in a bad spot, it's because we broke the laws. And we can come back to them in a minute. Now, again, the Cometics are going to go a different direction. So Cometics are going to be people who subscribe to some form of Egyptian spirituality or philosophy and history and developing their worldview. Now, there's different kind of Cometics. I mean, the two broad branches are going to be what I refer to as Kemetic spiritualists and Kemetic non-spiritualists. The Kemetic non-spiritualists, these are going to be people who don't necessarily, practice like, ancient Egyptian religion per se. They just believe that the philosophy, the history is valuable, and they kind of base their worldview around that. But they don't necessarily believe like, Horus is like a real entity or something like that. They wouldn't go that far with it. That's the non-spiritualists. Many times they talk quite a bit like atheists, really. It was kind of like a Egyptian flavored atheism, if you will. Then you also have the non-spiritual. Excuse me, you have the spiritualists rather. Now, these are going to be people who, in addition to developing their worldview around, the spirit, the philosophy and maybe history and culture of Egypt, they're going to add in that spiritual piece. So they're going to affirm, in some sense or another, that like Horus or Ra or any of those gods or goddesses are real in some sense. Now, typically, they I'll just say, yeah, I think it's fair to say typically they're not going to take each of those, spiritual entities as being like a distinct, god or goddess. Usually they'll fall in the category of people that believe that all of those things are representative of some sort of force in nature, or they take what's like a pantheistic view where kind of like everything is divine, and those are just different expressions of the divine. And by pantheist, I mean, the view that everything is God. So you have kind of like a Kemetic flavor, an Egyptian flavored pantheism on the one end, that's your Kemetic spiritualist, and then on the other hand, you have like your Kemetic flavored, atheists, or and that would be kind of like the Kemetic non-spiritualist. Now, again, they're going to say something to the degree of, you're a descendant of either Kemet, i.e., which Kemet is just another word for Egypt. They would say the indigenous word for Egypt. They're going to say you're a descendant of Egypt, one way or the other, or they're going to say somehow your ancestors are connected to Egypt by some sort, Egypt's influence on the continent or something along those lines. But one way or the other, you trace back to Egypt either genetically or at least culturally and by influence. And so for them, their thing is, the reason why, African people are in the Western world in a bad spot is because we've forsaken the ways of our ancestors. And we need to get back to, the ways of our ancestors in order for us to get right over here. You know what I'm saying? We need to adopt African practices and so forth, including the spiritual system. So that's kind of where the Kemetics are going to come from. Also, I think I mentioned earlier, what I refer to as African spiritualists. And these are going to be people who are practitioners of like Vodun, various forms of spiritual systems, Yoruba and so forth. And they're going to kind of take the same route as the Kemetics, in the sense that they would say that, we've abandoned the ways of our ancestors, and that's why we're in the bad spot over here. So again, there's that 1-2 punch between who you are and, trying to solve the problem of the African American predicament by saying, abandon substance from a religious standpoint.
Well, you almost were you were dropping out for a second. You were not super clear, but I think you're back in effect. Yeah, I think that's a good way to describe it for people to. I think so. EFFSET. I think that's a good way to describe it, and I think it's helpful for people to understand. And so, it's not like some attack on the truth value of Christianity is not present as well. We're just not necessarily focusing as much on that, but you will also see traditional and I guess we might say non-traditional criticisms of Christianity from these different groups as well. And some of the times they'll have similar things, and then other times they have different things. For example, you'll definitely hear things from the Kemets as far as polemics against Christianity that you wouldn't hear against Hebrew Israelites. But then you also find some overlap. For example, the non-Messianic, or as they say, Tanakh-only Hebrew Israelites, some of them do adopt the Christ myth hypothesis put forward by David Fitzgerald and Richard Carrier and Earl Doherty and people like that Jesus never existed. And so you'll have Tanakh-only Hebrew Israelites, and sometimes you'll get Kemets. In fact, I remember recently one guy came out and he was on Sonetta. It was Zion Lex. And he said, I'm not as sure the Christ myth hypothesis as I was. I'm open to the fact that Jesus was a historical person. I think in some way he might have been. I mean, I'm paraphrasing the discussion. You could correct me, Adam, if you want. But basically, they were like shocked. Like the audience was like, it was almost like he was selling out. And I'm like, dang, this community is so embedded in bad scholarship that when a guy comes out to just say, I'm skeptical of the Christ myth hypothesis and somewhat open to somewhat of a historical Jesus, they think he's the one going astray. That's how bad scholarship is in the conscious community.
But now what's interesting, you have something right there, right? So I don't think that was me. I think it was Bumblebee popped up.
Yeah. Shout out to Gallegos, my man EC, who's also on the squad, for hitting that Streamlabs link, guys. We don't have super chats, so the way we work around YouTube's totalitarianism, we love you, YouTube, is you go on that link and boom, 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 and they don't take out a big cut anyway, so it's doubly good. It's just people don't know how to use it, but it's right there on the link. But go ahead, brother.
No, see, now this is very interesting. So I did a series a while ago, I feel terrible about it, called, I think it was Ethnic Epistemology. And it kind of hits on something which you're saying. Epistemology is the branch of philosophy that has to do with knowledge. Basically, like, what is knowledge and how do you have it? And so I did a series called Ethnic Epistemology, where I kind of took a look at the epistemological assumptions of people in the conscious community. Now, going back to what you just said, like with Zion Lex is a perfect example, is that they look at him like he's tripping for acknowledging that Jesus was a historical person, or even entertaining that idea. You know what I'm saying? But the thing of it is, now obviously we know that the consensus view is among historians that Jesus did indeed exist. I mean, that's not controversial whatsoever. Now, but here's the thing: is that when you think about it, right? If you have a group of people, i.e., African Americans, who have been subject to deception, you know what I'm saying, for hundreds of years. I mean, they have been, like, we think about the Tuskegee, situation, or when you think about, I know you and we talked about that movie that just dropped, Judas and the Black Messiah, where the FBI really did get involved in disrupting, the Black Panthers, right? And
yeah, I mean, you really had
that we could get.
The FBI had was using our country's law enforcement services against normal citizens, who
Right.
the idea was just to prevent crime, supposedly. But the crime didn't even make sense, because it seems J. Edgar Hoover, who had a iron grip over the FBI for a long time, his main concern was a black messiah, as he called it. And so he was concerned about someone, rallying everyone together. And that's why he did what he did to King, and sent all these agents, or had paid intel into mosques across the country. And of course, did the same thing with the Black Panthers. And it's crazy. One of the first people at the scene when Malcolm X was shot was a guy who was an informant for several. No one ever knew. And then you got the similar thing where one of the higher ups, O'Neill, with the Black Panthers in Chicago, is a guy who's an informant, and it just goes on and on and on. And so these are real things. Like, you don't have to agree with a religion, but imagine how if the government said, well, this religion is dangerous just from its ideas alone, let's send people all up in there and create problems for them. How would we feel? Like, these are serious civil rights violations, and and so Adam's making the point, like, there has been a lot of tricks and games and hoodwinking going on, and dishonesty. And so he's saying, like, this distrust of what maybe is viewed as sort of the establishment is maybe more prominent. And so we recognize that, but I know you would say the same thing. It's not an excuse to do bad scholarship.
Right, no, exactly. So it's kind of like, if you have a bruise, if somebody punches you in the ribs and leaves a bruise, right, you're going to be sensitive in that area. You know what I'm saying? But then you might overreact. You know what I'm saying? Like, next time somebody comes near it, they might not even be coming for your ribs, but you might overreact. You know what I'm saying? To try to protect that rib. It's kind of like that with the Black community. When you have a community that's been subject to that sort of deception and just shady dealings by the authorities, then people become hypersensitive or hyperprotective, or actually I'll say hyper skeptical of the establishment. And so for somebody like a Zion Lex, if he's in agreement with the vast majority of what historians have to say, then they're going to give him a side eye, because it's like, whoa, why are you believing the oppressor? Why are you believing, and kind of on down the line. You see what I'm saying? So I said that to say that there are certain, really in any culture, there are common ideas. You know what I'm saying? There are certain things that are taken to be just, we'll just say, axiomatic. And one of those ideas in the conscious community is that the establishment cannot be trusted. And therefore, the so-called scholarship that comes out of the establishment also can't be trusted. That's a fundamental idea that swirls about in the conscious community. And unfortunately, it has this really bad side effect of causing people to reject really good scholarly work and forming their ideas on really bad information. That's the byproduct of that. And so, there's what we can say, but really the people the groups that I've named a second ago, that's going to be a commonality amongst members in any of those groups. Not to say everybody's like that, but there's just certain elements like that are kind of that aren't group specific. Any of those groups might fall. Anybody in those groups might fall prey to something like that. Does that make sense? I think either you're muted or
that was me. That was my bad. We're out of chapter 6, and now we're in chapter 7 of the book. And you say how There's, the Kemits, who a lot of times when people hear Kemet, they almost do a one-to-one correlation of the conscious community, but we're kind of broadening it out, including Hebrew Israelites, Moorish scientists, and those who engage in African mysticism and different kinds of spiritualists. Now, I don't know really if there is a lot in the book yet about Black atheism, but I feel like we should include that. I don't mean a whole thing on it, but it seems like it should be in here somewhere. That I look at this, but I don't know if you've written on that. I know you've done presentations on it, but I don't know if I'd be, unless you're using that for something. I might hit you up later on because I just kind of looked at that oversight and recognized that. But any other groups you want to talk about as we kind of do this survey of the conscious community before we go on to suggestions for prevention?
Well, yeah. So actually, we probably should mention the atheists, and you're right. I hadn't talked about them too much, but so with the Black atheists, they're going to be in the minority in the conscious community for the most part, I think. However, some of it's actually pretty strange. So you have like this kind of vague background atheism to a lot of the arguments that these guys put forth. You see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's there, but it's not necessarily crystallized in the way that you would see, say, for example, like a Richard Dawkins or something like that. You know what I mean? You may have somebody who expresses atheistic sentiments in the conscious community, but then they'll come back and say something like, "Oh, but no, I believe in God." You know what I mean? Because quite frankly, in the African American community, it's almost like the cardinal sin to not believe in God one way or the other. I'm saying that's like it's like you're turning in your black card if you don't believe in God or something like that. It's really like that, So most people, even if they're in Christianity, they're not going to go as far as to say, "Oh, I don't believe in God." Now, what's interesting about that though is that within the African American context, particularly the conscious community, you have what I call like an idiosyncratic use of the word atheist. And what I mean by that is somebody will say they'll call themselves a Black atheist, and then if you start to engage them in terms of what it is that they really believe and kind of get into the weeds a little bit, really what it is, they reject the God as represented in the Abrahamic faiths. You know what I'm saying? So they don't believe in like a monotheistic God that you would find in Christianity and Judaism. But they'll often accept some sort of like kind of pantheistic understanding of God. Everything is nature, everything is divine. They'll kind of hold to something like that while at the same time calling themselves atheists. So again, what they mean by atheists is that they really just reject the God. That's kind of what they're really coming from. But then you also have some legit atheists as well. You have some people who are just straight up. Yeah, what's that?
Well, I mean, yeah, I was just agreeing. My bad. You're breaking up a tad, though. That's whenever you break up a little bit is when I tend to try to be like, hey, let me say something, because I found a paragraph in the book that we wrote together that I think is funny. Let me read this to give people a flavor of the actual chapter before we move on to the idea of prevention. So here's part of the actual book. I'm reading it from the PDF. This is page 15, Adam, in the PDF I sent you. For most conscious community members, their research does not extend beyond YouTube and the websites they frequent. Prominent figures in the conscious community, such as Brother Polite, Dr. Umar Johnson, and old school conscious community celebrities like Dr. Ben Yochanan, provide conscious community members with a steady diet of misinformation aimed at supposedly affirming blackness, opposing Western oppression, and casting off the shackles of Christianity. Given the general distrust for Caucasian and institutions perceived as white, conscious community members have an affinity for non-European authors and sources, if they even cite a source, that is. The conscious community is often suspicious that the scholarly works contradicting their views are disseminated by the Western power structure to miseducate the public about black people. For these reasons, reliance upon pseudo-scholarship, Christ mythicism, and wild-eyed conspiracy theories are conscious community staples. To use an analogy drawn from Italian-American culture, conscious community advocates gobble up pseudo-scholarship faster than a fat Sicilian eating bacala during the Feast of the Seven Fishes. Note, Vocab wrote this last highly offensive sentence. Adam had nothing to do with it. He's a nice guy and better person than Vocab, so please don't blame Adam.
Yeah, I'm glad you put that little disclaimer in there, man. I appreciate it.
Hey, I got your back, bro. I got your back, man.
Don't want to ruin my...
I got your back. Don't worry.
No, I mean, but everything That was true though. I mean, it's facts. It's very true. I mean, and it was sad is, I mean, and people know I'm not tripping when I say this. Like, you'll have cats who'll watch a 45-minute video on YouTube, and now they debunk it. You know what I'm saying? Like, they, somehow 2,000 years of Christianity has just gone out the window. Or you have what I call, used to be Christianism. You know what I'm saying? And you have these folks. Oh, I used to go to church. I used to be a Christian.
Yeah.
And so
I already
like,
know all
because
the, I already know all the stuff you believe. I already know all that stuff you believe. And then they'll turn around and be like, I never heard these apologetic arguments until now. I don't know where you guys are getting this from. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly. It's like, so I mean, just because you attend a church somewhere, that doesn't mean you have like this inside track on all the ills of Christianity. It just means you went to church somewhere. You know what I'm saying? And I'm telling you, man, like I have yet, and I'm not exaggerating. I'm dead serious when I say this. I've been doing this for a little while now, and I have yet to find somebody who says, "Oh yeah, I know all about Christianity. I used to be a Christian." And then when you ask them follow-up questions, that they really have a grasp of Christian theology. That has never happened, not one time in my experience. You know what I'm saying? Now maybe there's somebody else out there. But I'm just saying that's been my experience. You know what I'm saying? That's that former Christianism. You know what I mean?
Christianism. That's good. I like that. Now, we got people just coming in. If you could drop your offhand, or I don't know if you want to go to the book to do it, before we go to prevention, your general loose definition of conscious community. Because someone in the live chat is actually saying, what is the conscious community? And, I understand that. That's why we're putting this book out there. Is because of that very reason. But how would you loosely define it, Adam, before we go to prevention?
Yeah, so I'm actually gonna this is terrible. I gotta switch plugs, man, because I'm getting this notification that my phone has like 20% left, so I'm actually gonna have to move to the other side of the room.
That's all right.
But before I do, let me just say this: that, when we're talking about the conscious community, it's actually kind of nebulous. I would describe it as being a loose-knit group of individuals and groups who subscribe to core ideas such as Christianity being the white man's religion, the notion that we've lost our identity, and that we meaning Africans, Africans of diaspora, are up against the establishment of broader society, including in our religious life. And so therefore they adopt, alternative views such as Hebraism, such as Comedicism, some of the other that we described.
Excellent. All right. Well, hey, you want to just, since you break up a little bit, you want to readjust and then call back? Does that sound all right?
Okay. All right.
Does that sound okay? And while he's doing that, everybody, since we're doing our book club here, I'm going to go ahead and actually read some from the book. Now, this is Adam. This is what Adam wrote. So I'm reading what he wrote. I just want to make that clear to everyone who understands. I'm reading his contribution to the book right now. This is in chapter 7, I believe, maybe chapter 8. I got to relook it. But it's under a section called Preventative Measures. And so now I'm going to read Preventative Measures. I, Adam Coleman, examine my own past, and I see at least one level of intervention the church has at its disposal to address the identity issue fueling the conscious community. When I was about 12, my family and I attended a church that made a biblically based effort to reconcile African ethnicity with Christianity. And that's actually what shirt I have on is provided by a BK Apologist. He puts out these shirts that have the African church fathers on the continent. It's a pretty cool little thing. Check out his store. My pastor at the time taught a series entitled Seeking the Lost. We went from Genesis to Revelation, pointing out people of African descent in the Bible and discussing roles they played in various biblical events. From this teaching series, I learned at a young age that people like me had a place in God's kingdom and plan. This served to vaccinate me from influences I would later encounter in college that attempted to persuade me that Christianity is at odds with my black skin. Both the Bible and church history are rich with diversity. Let me see if he's coming back on here. Hold on, are you calling? If you're calling, just give me a second. Oh, you're not calling yet. Okay. In addition... You know what? Let me real quick here bring up the book so it's not a blank screen that you guys are looking at on the other side. Where is the book? There is the book. Oh well, now he's back. Okay, so let me bring him back on. All right, Adam, got you back on. Let me just finish reading your part of this paragraph that you wrote. This is what Adam wrote. Both the Bible and church history are rich with diversity. In addition to the biblical characters, there are a number of African theologians, martyrs, thinkers, missionaries, and apologists, and apologists, period. For example, many of the earliest leading thinkers in Christianity were African. Tertullian, Origen, Alexander of Alexandria, Athanasius, and Augustine, just to name a few prominent African Christians. And that's exactly who's on my shirt. The facts are on our side for us to make a robust case that Christianity and the African continent have a deep, long-abiding relationship. Educating believers about this aspect of Christian heritage is a preventative measure churches can take in equipping the saints against challenges to the faith that center upon the alleged discord between Christianity and African ethnicities. And I'll stop reading there because we got the heavy hitter back on, Adam Coleman. All right, brother. So I just read a little bit, actually, from the preventative measure section, and you shared how you were able to hear a series at a church you were at that was about showing diversity of characters in the scripture, and you mentioned about church history as well, and so that's kind of where I left off. But take it away, my friend.
Yeah, man. Hopefully that's a little bit more clear now. But yeah. So actually, it was my church, the church that I was going to when I was a kid. I joined the church. Called Full Gospel AME Zion Church.
All
Pastor
right.
John. You know what I'm saying? That was my church from like 11 to about 14 or 15, and it was a very I won't say Afrocentric, but it was because they didn't make African identity like the end all be all, but you definitely had people who valued their Africanness at that church. I mean, in the church bookstore, they would sell dashikis and all that kind of stuff. So I remember when I was a kid, man. One of the few sermon series that I actually recall was called Seeking the Lost, with Pastor Cherry at the time, and he's passed on now, but at the time he just went through Genesis to Revelation, just dealing with the different people in the Bible who we can, reasonably say were, black, if you will, or African or whatever. And so we talked about that, man. We talked about Simon, the Niger, and we talked about, Lucius of Cyrene and things like that. And what was interesting for me is that by the time I get to college, when I'm running into these different groups, now you don't really hear about these guys too much now, but like God Body, for example, that was big, when I was in college.
I think those are kind of like five percenters, aren't they? Just so everyone listening, I think they're in that same kind of stream of thought. But go ahead.
Right, exactly. So God Body, you had pretty much everything that was like in Wu-Tang somehow found itself in broader expression in the community. Eventually, cats didn't know what Wu-Tang was talking about, but it just sounded hot. Then eventually
we got to teach the babies. We got to teach the babies.
Right. Right. So for me, when these dudes was on college campus talking about Christianity is the white man's religion, like it didn't really faze me like that. Because I could be like, oh, man, there's black people in the Bible. Like that was at that time. That's all I really knew. From like an urban apologetic standpoint. But that was enough. That kept me from falling into one of these other groups or whatever. So I said to say, just learning the basics. I'm saying about African church history, learning the basics about blacks in the Bible, learning the basics about how it's not the case that the beginning and end of the African experience of Christianity is from the cotton fields forward. That's just not true. When you learn these things and when you teach them to your children, you can vaccinate them against that identity bait that some of these other groups would want.
So wait. I just want to make sure real quick. I want to get this straight. You are pro-vaccination. That's because you... Just to make sure. Yeah, Basic says God Body was big in the early 90s, in the 90s, early 2000. So brother knows what you're talking about. Shout out to Basic. But go ahead.
No, it's very true, man. I mean, so, but again, I think that what we need to do is we need to make sure. So let me take a step back for a second, right? What is it that the church is called to do? Okay, the church is called to make disciples, right? That's what the church is called to do. Now, we're not called to just make converts. We're called to make disciples. Disciples are those who Christ. You understand? And those who after Christ. You should be discipled in every part of your life, including how you resolve the identity aspect of your worldview, right? So if that's the case, we need to be educating actually, all disciples should be educated as to how to navigate those kind of things. No, it just so happens in the Western world, an aspect of that is knowing how to contend against the false identity claims from some of these other worldviews. You know what I'm saying? We have to be able to do that. And so for us, when somebody comes and says, well, Christianity is the white man's religion, we need to have a ready response for that. we need to have something to say. You can't say, no, it ain't. I mean, no, we can do better than that, and I think that we should. So, with that being said, for example, St. Augustine, right? Many of us have heard of him. I didn't know till like maybe 6 or 7 years ago that he was from Africa. You know what I'm saying? I didn't know that. I didn't know that you had a North African named Tertullian, who was a theologian going back to, we're talking about the 3rd century, who coined the phrase the Trinity. You know what I'm saying? I didn't know that. I didn't know that you had this long list of African individuals in church history who really made a difference, whether it be Cyprian, whether it be Shenouda of Retrieve, whether it be Tychonius, whether it be, I could name a bunch of people, Perpetua, Felicitas, there's a bunch of different folks that we can refer to. And if we don't know these things, you know what I'm saying, or excuse me, if we were to teach these things rather, then we can stave off some of these, again, false notions that somehow Christianity is anti-African. Nothing can be further from the truth. The fact of the matter is, perfect example. You know what I'm saying? Cats can go check it out on my channel. We find new stuff all the time, but actually, we now have primary source evidence that there was an indigenous African Christian community in West Africa at least 100 years before the transatlantic slave trade. You know what I'm saying? So
can you say that again? Hey brother, can you say that again? You broke up a little bit.
West Africa wasn't Africa.
Oh man.
Okay.
Well, you're frozen again.
Yeah, am I breaking up now,
yeah, if you could hold on. Well, let me see. Are you unfrozen? Nope, you're still frozen. Well, you're not. You're like they're just doing the pixelated thing where it's like not that many frames or something like that. All right, I think it'll be all right. It is what it is. Okay, so
if you want, I can go out to the car. It might be better if I go outside. You want to try that, or?
Well, out to the car. Why would that? Would that be better? Out to the car?
This is going to be outside.
Well, we only got we are at the place where the end is in sight as far as today's live stream. We're going to do a little section about responses, and obviously this is not a whole book filled with responses, but we're going to give some. You really have thumbnail sketches here, and we'll see. Maybe we'll expand upon this, but now we go into chapter 8, responding to the conscious community. And, the book is in flux, but for now I'm heading off this chapter with a quote I found from John Stott that I liked, which says, although there is an important place for dialogue with people of other faiths, there is also need for encounter with them, and even for confrontation, in which we seek both to disclose the inadequacies and falsities of non-Christian religion, and to demonstrate the adequacy and truth, absoluteness, and finality of the Lord Jesus Christ. I like that quote. And so we kind of show a little, beginning here about how to respond to some of these. But Adam, I'm not saying you have to go out to the car, but we should have you call back because you are frozen pretty bad. You've been in the same thinking man position for the past 2 minutes or something. So let me knock you off, and if you could call back, and then we'll get this on the road. Again, shout out to the live chat. Adam's kind of on the road, everybody, right now. He's not in his normal setup. So I was just glad that he was able to join me. So the reason why this is happening, and I knew this was going to be the case, but I just really wanted him on tonight, is he's not in his normal setup. And so that's why. And so we thought there might be a problem. Of course, before we did this show, there was no problem, but now there's a little bit of problem. But it's all working out. And so I'm going to read a little bit of the beginning here, and then we'll let Adam verbally give the rest. And here's how this begins. Wait, where'd it go? Where did it? Well, let's see. Contrast. Okay. Let me throw Oh, I already got the screen on there. Oops. So I don't need another one, do I? No, I don't, but whatever. These are tentative book covers, by the way. I got a whole bunch of mock-ups, so I'm not sure which was going to be the final one. But let me read this here. How can we respond to the conscious community? Well, the apologetics community should do what it has done in the past as challenges arose. When the new atheists begin to emerge, Christian philosophers, scientists, historians, textual critics, and theologians went to work using their skill sets. Experts put forth rational responses to the objections raised against Christianity. With other societal matters, apologists demonstrated how Christianity affords us a coherent worldview that both honors God and provides guidelines for how we interact with one another. The belief systems and ideologies represented within the conscious community can neither support the weight of their claims nor provide a coherent worldview. The conscious community, however, has gone virtually untouched by our apologetics community. They have gained traction while remaining in the shadows. It's time for Christian apologists to respond. Let's do our research and push out some much-needed high-quality content. What follows is an introductory survey of the conscious community. This chapter provides brief summaries of the identity/belief systems mentioned earlier. Included is a short list of points to guide discussions as you encounter those who subscribe to them. And with that, we've got a couple different groups mentioned. We've got Hebrew Israelism, a little guide there. We got more scientists, which we haven't really talked much about. We got African spiritualities. We got Kemetic spiritualists, Afrocentric atheists. And so a couple groups that are mentioned. And Adam, you came on and then you disappeared. And since that's happening, what I'm going to actually do on this part is I'm actually going to show you a little section of the way this looks. And so you'll get an idea of the way it looks as we're working on this book, that is. So let me bring this up real quick here, everybody. But how did I bring it up? I got to go to sign window. I always forget how to do this. What's the best way? When you don't, oh, well, there's Adam again. Okay. What's up, brother? Okay, looks like you're back. Okay, you are back, my friend. And all right, well, we're in the section now where we are telling people a thumbnail sketch of how to respond, and you've got a couple groups laid out here, and you have little bullet points. This part, I don't know. Do you have the? Let me bring up the PDF on the screen because you may want to look at it for this part. I'll take my face off and put that on there.
Yeah, I might just try to come back in because you're clicking like a lot, so it's probably me, man. I'm sitting like this.
Oh, for real? Okay.
Yo, the bumblebee sounds crazy.
Yeah. Shout out to Liza for the bumblebee Streamlab tip. Thank you. Or should I say? Okay. Oh, by the way, everybody, do not forget that if you're in the squad, if you're a supporter, tomorrow is our meeting, our exclusive hangout that we've got. And the time is posted in the Patreon group. I'll try to put it in the Facebook group, and also, I'll try to put it in the Subscribe Star. And we're going to be meeting. And tomorrow, part of what we are going to do for our meeting is sort of a little prayer meeting. And so everybody, when you come on, I know we kind of hang out. We're going to hang out. But because of a lot of things going on, we're going to dedicate a portion of our time tomorrow to prayer as well. So, all right, here's Brother Adam Coleman. And how things popping on your end, my friend? Sound good? Look good? What's the deal?
When you say it sound looks good, you said, what's the deal? I heard that part.
Well, okay, that's something.
Oh, okay. We're cooking with gas. All right. What about me? Can you hear me pretty well?
Yeah, you're good, man. You're good. So how do we respond to these challenges?
Well, so I think that you're going to have, again, each of these groups are going to have like a common core that they're going to bring to the table against Christianity. And then they're going to kind of split off and have their own individualized objections as well. So the common core is going to be the notion that Christianity is a white man's religion. And there's a number of different ways to respond to that. But in short, you can just talk about African church history. You can talk about how the fact that before you even get out of the first century, there's evidence of Africans embracing Christianity of their own accord, of their own will. You can talk about how Ethiopia, declared itself, Christian. We're talking about your 4th century and so forth, right? We can talk about how what's called modern day Sudan, we refer to as ancient Nubia, was a Christian nation going back to possibly the 5th century all the way up to the 1300s. You know what I'm saying? It was a literal Christian nation. So you're talking about a Christian nation on the continent of Africa for about 1,000 years, all of that coming before the transatlantic slave trade, right? So there's all these different historical points. And I would refer people to the videos that I have with Dr. Vince Bantu, where he goes in much more detail with that. And he also has a book, as a matter of fact. I think it's called A Multitude of All Peoples. So you can check that out on Amazon. It's available, where he goes through in detail. Just, you were talking about 2,000 years of Christianity on the continent of Africa, with about 1,400 of that coming before the transatlantic slave trade. But then even when we get over to here to the Americas and here in the Western world, there's this notion that Christianity was just kind of, you got the Bible in one hand and then the bullwhip in another, with the slave master beating Christianity into the African enslaved person. And that's what I call the bubblegum version of history. You know what I'm saying? I mean, if you look at the historical record, I'm talking about going to, enslaved persons in their own words, you find out that that's flat out not true. The fact of the matter is, you cannot, I'll put it this way: there is no more potent worldview that was a force for the liberation of African peoples than Christianity. That's just a fact. I'm talking about from slavery, to, the civil rights movement and beyond. That's just a fact. It was a matter of personal resistance to say that, you were, that you belong to God. You know what I'm saying? It was just like basically reclaiming oneself from this, the slave institution. So there's all these dynamics between enslaved persons and Christianity that just don't get spoken about. But again, the fact of the matter is, there's just no good reason to take the view that Christianity was merely a tool of white supremacy being beaten to the slaves. The historical record flat out doesn't bear that out. There's so many other dynamics to it. You know what I'm saying? There's so many people who, fought for the abolition of our people on the basis of their Christian convictions. We could talk about Henry Highland Garnett. We could talk about, obviously we could talk about, Frederick Douglass. We could talk about, my man Martin Delany, J.W. Le Guin. We could talk about John Locke. We could talk about even beyond going, looking at, slavery itself, talking about just the liberation of our people, even economically. We could talk about somebody like a Marcus Garvey. You know what I'm saying? Who's like considered to be one of the, the pillars of Pan-Africanism. You know what I'm saying? He expressed that he believed in the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, that he believed in the God of Christianity. So, throughout our history here in the West, it is not the case that Christianity has been just like this, boom, it's just the handmaiden of white supremacy. That's it. That's simply not true. And so we can highlight those kinds of things. And I do so on my show all the time, so people can check that out. Actually, in particular, I have a video called The Image of God and the Black Experience, where I pull out different quotations from abolitionists, civil rights activists, and so forth, who explicitly appeal to the concept of being made in the image of God from the scriptures. You know what I'm saying? They explicitly appeal to it in their argumentation against slavery and against Jim Crow and so on and so forth. You know what I'm saying? This is a part of our history. So in terms of like those general objections to, Christianity from that vantage point, that anybody or any of those groups that we mentioned are going to be coming with, those are the kind of objections that we want to, bring to them and say, hey, that's just not the case. But aside from that, when it comes to like the Hebrew Israelites, for example, typically they want to drive the conversation, I think, to the identity claim. It seems like that's where they want to spend most of their time. Personally, I think that the weightier matters, if you will, in terms of what the Bible has to say, gets that you got to get down to who does the Bible say that Jesus is? I'm saying, is he God or is he not? Is there a Trinity or isn't there? Like, those are the kind of things we want to hash out. You want to have under your belt a healthy artillery of scripture and arguments for divinity for those Hebrew Israelites who are Tanakh only and just subscribe to the Old Testament. You want to have a healthy argument, from the historicity of the resurrection. That can come in handy. I'm saying that's going to be something that you find like Michael Coleman comes to mind. He's got a really simplistic version of that. So when you deal with Hebrew Israelites, you want to deal with the Trinity. You want to talk about the divinity of Christ. You also want to deal with have a healthy understanding of the law. I'm saying, like, where do New Covenant believers stand when it comes to the Mosaic law? When they come to you and say, hey, why are you eating pork, brother? You're saying, why you ain't rocking these fringes? You're saying, you want to have something to say. I'm saying you want to be able to walk them through the scriptures. Particularly, I'm thinking about like Galatians chapter 3, or really the whole book of Galatians, but in particular like Galatians chapter 3, where it really breaks down that the Mosaic law is not binding upon the New Covenant believer today. You know what I'm saying? Things of that nature. So usually with the Hebrew Israelites, those are the places I would recommend you go. And then also salvation. What is the gospel? Who is salvation for? Interestingly enough, vocab, you'll find this interesting. And I'm just sharing this out here. So I had my pastor hit me up and wanted me to reach out to a brother who supposedly was with some Hebrew Israelites, and the issue at hand was who can be saved. Supposedly this person was at their job, and the who can be saved. So you get these folks going. I say on the scriptures about other groups of Gentiles and so forth. Yet and still, we find time and time again the Hebrew Israelites trying to subscribe to an Israel-only salvation or something close to it. So you want to be able to demonstrate from the scripture,
or even primacy, because they'll do primacy as well. They'll be like, "Oh, I'm not Israel only," but then there'll be primacy. You know what I'm saying, or Israelite supremacy, supposedly. Claim your inheritance. Commented on this section of the show saying, "Oh, here we go with the Israelite slander."
Okay, bro.
How are we just in this little? It's funny, this show is not about Hebrew Israelism, but they're going to be covered in here. How in the world is anything we said slanderous against Hebrew Israelites? That's claim your inheritance. You're trying to accept the mantle of a victim. Like, hey, these guys are gonna now just lie about us. Let me ask you, claim your inheritance. Can a Christian disagree with the Hebrew Israelite without lying about them? The answer is yes. I hope you know that. Just because someone thinks you're wrong and doesn't think your ideologies are right doesn't mean they're slandering you. You just got to do better than that, because no one's slandering you. We're doing a survey of the conscious community, including Hebrew Israelism, and if you're going to say that, where do we slander you? Because guess what? If you want to play this game, if you say we're slandering you and we're not slandering you, then guess who's slandering you? It's you. All right. So continuing on there, let's do the Moorish scientist slander part now. Let's slander them.
Yeah, so wait,
hold on. I'm sorry. There aren't any Israelites up there. Claim your inheritance. You're changing. Okay, you're changing what you said, because now you're saying, well, there's no Hebrew Israelites on the panel. That's not what you said at first. Number one. So, number one. Number two, I want you to, every time there's a Hebrew Israelite discussing Christianity, go whine and complain and shed big crocodile tears to them and say, there's no Christians on the panel. How can you be talking about them? So come on, man. Come on, man. Let's be honest. Okay, go ahead, bro. I'm sorry. I just see this and those who are easily triggered sometimes trigger me back. But go ahead, bro. Go ahead, Adam.
That's all good. It's all good. Now, so with the Moorish science, they're kind of interesting. I don't think you see them as much as you see, say, like the Hebrew Israelites or some of these other groups. But with them, they're kind of like a spinoff, if you will, of Islam. They're kind of like a different version. So with them, again, we're talking about that 1-2 punch. So they're going to say that you're a Moor from an identity standpoint. And the reason why Black people are going through right now is that we haven't taking advantage of our legal status as being Moors. And if we would just take our legal status and change like your status to being a Moor, then there are all these legal benefits, that come along with that. And ultimately, by taking that status, then even in the end time, so to speak, we'll be positioned to, be in a better spot. So that's kind of like in a nutshell where Moors are coming from. Now with them, in so much as they take kind of like a Islamic kind of monotheistic approach to God, then you can really engage them somewhat along those lines. Now, granted, again, I want to make sure I'm not being like too general, because there are different kinds of Moors, so I want to be careful of that. But for them, I would recommend going back to the scriptures about who is Jesus. You know what I'm saying? Having a healthy understanding of the historical evidence for the resurrection. That's where I would start. You know what I'm saying? Because that's going to, talk about theology. Now, if you just start, say, for example, with the Hebrew Israelites, if you just start with theology, talking with the Moors, they don't care nothing about that. You know what I'm saying? So you don't. That's not going to be your starting point. I would recommend starting with Jesus, who Jesus is, and his resurrection, and then kind of working your way from there. You know what I'm saying?
Nice. All right, so leaving the Moorish scientists and going on to African spiritualists.
The African spiritualists are interesting because with them, they're just such a hodgepodge. You know what I'm saying? They're kind of like a catch-all, whereas, let's say, for example, you might have an African spiritualist that practices Santeria. You know what I'm saying? They believe that to be like a hybrid between some African spirituality and what you find in, the South Americas or whatever. Or you might have another African spiritualist who just straight up like, I'm just straight Vodun, straight up, Yoruba, Vodun, boom, that's it. There's different kinds of African spiritualists, but by and large, what you're going to do is, quite frankly, typically you're not going to find them as being too theologically sharp, because you're not going to want to dive straight into, some sort of deep theological issue. Again, you want to go back to the resurrection, you know what I'm saying? Or quite frankly, now, depending on how savvy you are, now this might be a little bit different than what I wrote in the chapter. I might need to go back and revise it. But depending on how savvy you are with apologetics, sometimes you can go with a moral argument. So you can talk about the moral argument for God's existence. I'm saying that which would point to one God. I'm saying who's like the standard of morality versus what you tend to see among African spiritualists. They tend to take on kind of like a moral relativist perspective, kind of like anything goes. What's good for you is good for you, or what's good for me is good for me. So actually, if you're a little bit savvy, with your apologetics, you might want to challenge them on those grounds. That might be an update that we might need to throw in the chapter there.
Yeah, you got a tiny little section where it's has major premise, minor premise, and conclusion. But that's all that's present as of now. And that really brings us to the end of the chapter. And let me read this section, and then we'll kind of wrap up. Shout out to BK Apologist. Everybody subscribe to his channel. And let me see. Yeah, definitely. Man, I forget.
Congratulations to BK for hitting 2,000 subscribers, man.
Oh, yeah, 100%. Facts, that's exactly right. Yeah. Congratulations, man.
Matter of fact, remember that group B2K?
Man.
You remember that singing group?
Yeah, come on, bro. Come on, bro.
I might until he gets to 3,000 subscribers, man. I might have to call him B2K, bro.
Oh man, bro. I don't know if he's gonna be down with that. He might want you to call him DeBarge. Yeah. That's his jam right there. All right, here's what it says at the end. Right. As you probably discern from this chapter, the conscious community is not truly a bona fide community. Indeed, the conscious community is radically fragmented. There's a lot of infighting within the conscious community. If Christians can become more united and organized, we can put a serious dent in this harmful movement. In fact, many urban apologists believe God is going to bring revival to many hurting communities through a new apologetics movement. If you are an urban apologist at any stage, or if you support urban apologetics in any capacity, we, Adam and Vocab, encourage you to keep doing what you're doing. Keep fighting and moving forward. God is miraculously changing hearts, and in the end, we shall reap if we faint not. As disciples of Christ, let's keep pushing this beautiful gospel of his kingdom. As we stay steadfast in him, God will do something awesome both in and through us. Keep grinding. We're making a difference. Stay strong in the Lord. All right. So that's kind of this month's, book club, which is actually showing you guys a little sample, giving you a little flavor from the book you see on your screen, tentatively titled Apologetics in Context. And of course, that's a tentative cover as well. But now I need to bring Adam Coleman back on and see if we need to say anything else. What else we need to say, man? What else we need to say?
Oh man! No, I'm kidding. I was saying like I was frozen. That's
bro.
My fault, man.
All right, what you got? EIO.
No, everybody. I mean,
I was gonna say but you about sound how you were joking about sounding. You almost are right there, but go ahead.
It's all good. Nah, man, I don't have too much else to say, man. Just thanks for having me on, bro. I want to encourage all the apologists out there in the urban. Again, kind of echoing what you just said. Stay on the grind, man. We got a lot of work to do. One of the things that I'm really concerned is, even though I think it's dope that we're all kind of finding each other and getting together and stuff, we can never lose sight of the fact that there's scores of thousands of millions of people that have no idea who we are, what we're doing. There's a lot of work to be done. It's like Jesus said, the fields are white with harvest, and we need to make sure that we're getting out there, man, and getting the gospel out. Never get settled, never get complacent preaching the gospel.
Woohoo, that's right. And by the way, BK Apologist said that was whack, Adam. But then he tried to tell me that what I said was whack too, I think. So whatever.
He'll never let me on the channel again.
Yeah, he tried to say what I said was whack too. But whatever, dude. Whatever, man. You can't be hating on. I guess BK Apologist doesn't like Elder Barge. Psh. Whatever.
Who knew?
Fine. You know what, BK Apologist? How about Menudo then? I'll give you them. I'll give you them instead. All right, man. So tell people what you got going on next, Adam. Maybe even tell people about a book you've contributed to coming out in about a month or two. What's up, dude? What's up?
Yeah, it's crazy, bro. Yeah, man. So I'm proud to say that I was in that number, man. Shout out to Eric Mason. We got this book called Urban Apologetics, Restoring Black People, and I'm elated, bro, that I was to be able to contribute a chapter on Black atheism. Also did a section on frequently asked questions.
Section on what? Say that again. Section on
man,
what?
Y'all need to definitely copy.
Section on what though? Could you repeat that?
I did a section on Black atheism.
Yeah, and you also said.
Oh, man, did you lose me again or?
No, I hear you, but you said Black atheism. What else?
Yes, I did Black frequently asked questions. That's going to be on the website though. That's not actually in the book.
Got you. Okay.
So but it's available now, man, on Amazon for April 6th. So y'all check that out.
All right, yeah, Nate's dropping the link. People can pre-order it right now, and so you definitely want to grab it. Thank you very much, Nate. All right, Adam, I'm gonna let you be with your family, bro, and I really appreciate you coming on, man. And man, you do great work. You're the apologist I want to be like when I grow up, bro. So keep it up, man. Keep on being our role model.
Hey, sorry for the technical difficulties, man. But I appreciate you having me, bro.
Oh, that's all right, man. That's all right. You do your thing. All right, everyone. Let's try to see if we can sneak in a freestyle to end this. And Adam, God bless. I'll talk to you though. Let's see if I can do this. Can I do this? Can I do this? Can I do this? Come through with this. Can I hear myself as I go for Delph? Don't rhyme for wealth. Vocab Malone, put on your seatbelt as I rip this microphone. 1, 2, not a clone, but I'm coming after you. Vocab, microphone, mic check 1, 2. Hey yo, I'm coming through. Can you hear me? Cheer me loudly and clearly. Here we go. Yes, indeed, with the flow. Vocab, like oh. Been a minute since I got up in it and spit it when I hit it. Gotta rap it till can't quit it. Beat like Riddick Bobo. Vocab Malone at the end of the show. Freestyle, you got the front row. Ticket when I rip it. Somebody say ho. Somebody say hey. Like Frito-Lay, you can't eat one. Now I parlay like the Twitter clone. Vocab Malone, spitting from my homes from the straight of the dome. Top of the dome, top of the knot. You know that we rock. You know that we non-stop, never monotonous. Give me the mic, I'm on top of this. The microphone when I spit it. Check it out now, can't quit it. I committed a crime against the mic, been acquitted. Now I grab the mic, you know that I'm livid when I do this, split this, yes indeed. Now I gotta do this, lyrical fitness, lyrical acrobatic. Check it out now, jump on the mattress. Back in the day, up in the hood. Shout out to y'all, it's all good. All right, y'all. God bless. Thanks for joining. I'll let you know when the next one is. Follow on social media so you can figure out when the next one is. All right? All right? Don't be a stranger. At Vocab Malone on all social media. Thanks again to Adam Coleman for joining us. Shout out to Jonathan Soko. I see him in the live chat. He provides lots of beats. These beats, though, by my man Justin Martyr. You know. I don't got the intro lined up, so instead, I'll just have to do this.